Thanks very much, Mr. Speaker. I don't have any amendments to this act. I was very happy to see it, and as I say, I've been advocating and campaigning for it. I've been making helpful suggestions to the government. I've been embarrassing them. I've had media extravaganzas. I've done whatever I can to move this along. I just want to say that there's a couple of opportunities I want to give here. One of the things that the Liberal Act had suggested, and that was the Bill 209 from 2012, previous to the election. It's fun to have a year in which there's two complete sets of bills with the same numbers. My colleague from Calgary-Buffalo had introduced the Homeowner Protection Act. And it had exactly the same layout of coverage. But one of the things that we were considering was licensing. And if the licensing that a contractor would have to have a license, and if they failed to produce a quality good, a quality build, their license could be suspended and they would have to fix that before they would be issued a license and could not continue on. Because, of course, one of the problems that we see is that an unscrupulous builder can just leave the name of the company and leave the company with no assets. So you could sue them for problems like we've been describing, and you can even win, according to what the court says, but you've won nothing because there's no assets left in the company. And it was a way of having some of these contractors keep slipping away and not be held responsible. So we had wanted a system that would stop that kind of thing. And we had suggested this licensing. Now, when I spoke to the minister, he had said, well, they were doing that, but they were going to make the warranty company offer the licensing. So the licensing was not on the work as such. It was going to be through the warranty. And basically, you've got to have a warranty. If you do not fulfill all of the requirements, the next time you want to go and build something, you would have to go and get another warranty again through the insurance companies. And since you didn't fulfill the last one, they wouldn't give you a warranty for the next one, and that would stop some of it. I have been trying to find where that is in the bill, so if the minister or deputy minister would like to point me to the right section, seeing as we're in a section-by-section analysis, that would be helpful. I think when we consider things like a new Home Buyer Protection Act, certainly to me, I can't unweave it from the two other pieces that we have seen fail us. One is it's part of the building codes, but it's not so much the building codes themselves. It's just shoddy business practices where it's not clear enough that there's an expectation that it's well built. And what some of those details are. So, I mean, if you want some past examples of where that's failed people in Alberta, we had, for example, the government approve a certain building material in the mid-90s called pine shakes. And they were on a list of approved materials, check-marked, you know, kiss of approval from the government that people could use. And so they believed that this was a good product. And they bought it. It was substantially cheaper than the cedar shakes. And, in fact, they were terrible. they molded, they cracked, and, you know, that was the scandal of the 2010s was the pine shake scandal of the 1990s, basically. And so the whole craftsmanship building products is, to me, interwoven with the warranty. And one other piece, and that is always the monitoring on compliance and the enforcement of compliance. Because any one of those set apart, if they don't have the other two pieces in them, they don't succeed. And I think we have to consider them together. So I would have liked to have seen this extend beyond the simple warranty program that they've done here, which is essentially an insurance program, but they're making you get it. So like car insurance, where the government says you have to have PL and PD, you must have it, it's the law, you can't drive a car without it. Okay, so the government says you have to have it, so then the government regulates it so that it is affordable for people, because you can't put people in a position where you say you have to have this and then it's too expensive for them to have it. So like car insurance, we're now developing a corollary here in new homebuyer protection acts, where the builder has to have that warranty, which is in fact an insurance plan. The builder is betting things will go wrong, and the insurance company is betting that they won't, and that they'll make the money for it. But I'm not particularly seeing how this is all going to knit together. And let me just give you a few examples of that. I don't know how many of you drive around and you see that very common kind of California strip mall design. You can see it from a ways away, and it's always got a little peaky thing and often a little circle in it, and it's just so California strip mall. And you think, who would build that here? This is a winter city. And I would like to see us be proud of the things we've learned as winter people in a winter city, in a winter province, because we have developed ways of doing things that do take into consideration the fact that we live in a place where it snows and it gets cold, and even far enough north where you get permafrost, and you've got to deal with all those things. So, yeah, and snowmobiling, yeah, that's good too. But why aren't we making our knowledge and promoting knowledge of building materials and building construction models that understand and use a winter cities approach? Because it's another way we could be marketing some of our knowledge. But I'm sure that I don't have to prod people very hard to think of some of the things you've seen where you went, why on earth would they do that here? What a stupid idea. I'm thinking of the pebble and glue that were used in a number of for the sidewalks. And you take one, and I used to, I went through university cutting grass in the summer and shoveling snow in the winter, and I took one look at that stuff and went, not gonna wash. Because the first time you bring along a steel blade on that pebble and glue stuff, it broke the pebble stuff up, and it just made a mess of it. So it worked great around the pools in the California brochure that you looked at. Not a good idea for use in Edmonton or Calgary or even Lethbridge. And one of the other things, and it's not just the material, but it's also the usage of the material. Because you heard me talk earlier about the acrylic, hang on. No, it's not the siding. It's the plaster. It's the goopy stuff. Okay. And there's two kinds of it, cementitious and acrylic. And the acrylic was fairly new. And it was much loved. It is still fairly new. But people really liked it because you could get vibrant colors. And with the cementitious, I hope I'm saying that right, plaster? Yeah, I guess that's the word for it. It was very soft, muted, pastel sort of colors. The thing is that with acrylic, you can use it here. We did develop it well enough. You can use that acrylic plaster, but it has to be thick enough. You can't put it on in a 3/4 inch. And I couldn't tell you exactly how it has to be. I could just tell you that I know that it's thicker than the standard. So there's a couple of things that we could be doing to promote ourselves and our own expertise. And we've got somebody in the back there that used to build manufactured homes. I'm sure that, the way he built them to deal with our winters is different than somebody would build it, in Arizona. And the final point I want to make is how you knit this together with the inspections, because you can pass as many of these pieces of legislation as you want. If we don't have the inspection or monitoring provisions in place to make sure that there is compliance with what's been set out, it's useless. And I'm sorry, as soon as they know that nobody's watching them, people are going to do it. They want a profit, they're going to cut a little bit of a corner. When nobody says anything, they're going to cut a bigger corner. It happens. But I want to know that we understand that these kinds of things do need that monitoring for compliance, and more than that, that there's an enforcement for compliance. And sometimes that enforcement for compliance can be quite innovative. It doesn't always have to be a stick. Sometimes it could be a carrot. And it doesn't always mean a fine, because sometimes that will just make people try and figure out a different way to do it to simply avoid the fine. But so to me, these things go together. The warranty, the building codes and the building processes, and the inspection and monitoring for compliance. So thank you to the government for listening to not only me, but many other people who were quite concerned about this. It doesn't help anyone that's already owning their condominium. So last plug on this one. We also need to update the Condominium Act itself, which is decades out of usefulness. It always was, actually. It was always way behind. And most of the Condominium Act is focused on a developer building a condominium, and at what point does he hand it over to the people that have bought it. And it doesn't deal with the fact that we now have condominiums that are 30 years old. We now have condominiums that have been converted from apartment buildings into a condominium. So the frustrations and struggles that people are having currently with living in a condominium and that whole condominium life are not covered under the current Condominium Act. And it has to be. We have more and more people living in that situation. It really needs to be covered, and I've been asking Service Alberta for probably 4 or 5 years. I'm sure I'm going to be told by the minister that they're consulting. Well, the previous minister consulted, and I even had someone on that committee, and it just turned out to be a bunch of lawyers, God bless them, who represented different parts of the condominium community. You know, some represented the builders and some represented the condominium boards and some represented the property management companies, but they're all lawyers, and all they did was sit around and talk about the nitty-gritty of it, and guess what? Nothing happened with the committee. So again, to the Minister of Service Alberta, he actually has one of the neatest ministries there is going, because it's consumer protection. So I am now going to turn my laser-like gaze upon him to be moving that Condominium Act along, because it's quite deficient and it needs to be brought up to speed. And finally, and I am way off on a tangent here, and I recognize that, Mr. Speaker, thanks for your patience, is we do also need legislation on life lease arrangements. But I will not go into any more detail on that, other than to say I've got a life lease. Where's the other one? Clairview, I think. I know that there's increasing, they're coming, and they're turning up in smaller towns, and they are really a living situation that's halfway between a pure rental arrangement and a condominium. But right now there's no legislation on it that governs them, and they're starting to have some issues about how they're taxed. What happens when you sell it? Is that considered a capital gain? And they're getting into court, and there's nothing for the judges to work on. So for those of you that don't like judge-made law, remember that the judges can only interpret what is actually written. And right now, they don't have anything to work off of for the life lease situation. So for the Minister of Service Alberta, 2 things that I'm putting on his plate. One is the life lease arrangement. The other is the Condominium Act. Thank you very much to the Minister of Municipal Affairs for doing the work on this new home buyer protection, and I'm very happy to support it in Committee of the Whole, and I look forward to discussing the anticipated effect of it, which should be wonderful, in 3rd reading. Thank you.